When I was 18 in 2013, I went on a scuba diving trip with my parents to Jamaica. We aren't loaded, but my mom is a travel agent, so she was able to arrange for us to stay at a very old hotel called Round Hill for free or dirt cheap. Many presidents and celebrities have stayed here, and this is also where Rodgers and Hammerstein met the Von Trapps, their inspiration for The Sound of Music. So, it's a beautiful old place with lots of lovely groves, candles, and flowers, and it sets a very private and lovely ambience. On the second night, because I was 18 and wanted my own space, I told my parents I was going to go for a walk. I walked along the path on the beach, which was shielded by lots of bushes and palm trees. I laid down in a hammock and listened to the ocean lapping at the shore while I looked up at the stars. It was so peaceful and lovely. After about 10 or so minutes, I noticed through the trees a woman in white coming up the path, then turning and heading into the ocean. Keep in mind, this is not like a classic beach. You don't swim at this part. The path is completely separated by trees, and then there were a lot of rocks, and then the ocean. Couldn't be more than 20 feet away. She kind of glides over the rocks, not really struggling to navigate them, and begins wading into the water in her dress. I didn't want to scare her if she turned around and saw me watching her, so I said, "Good evening." She turned around, looked at me, softly smiled, and then turned back to the water, and then she was gone. When I say I went completely white, I felt like I was going to vomit. I immediately jumped out of the hammock and began alternating between jogging and power walking back to my room, occasionally getting the courage to look over my shoulder. Suddenly, I ran into my dad head on, and he looked panicked. I immediately said, "What's wrong?" at the same time that he was asking me if I was okay. He told me that while he and my mom were hanging out in the room, my mom suddenly looked at my dad and said, "We need to find Rachel. I have a really bad feeling something happened." My dad immediately came to find me. I relayed to him the story while we walked, and when we arrived, my mom hugged me. I told her what happened, and she said, "I knew it." When I think about that and do the math on the time, my dad and I met a little over halfway between the villa and where I was. My mom felt that fear at the exact moment that the feeling of dread washed over me. Regardless of what I saw, if it was real or if I was going crazy, the really beautiful thing to me is that my mom and I have some kind of quantum entanglement, and the moment I was impacted by this, so was she. I feel so lucky to have a mother that also feels like a guardian angel to me. I was 14 at the time. I lived at home with my parents and my 10-year-old sister in a normal suburban house in CT. I had always believed in ghosts, but I had never experienced anything and never wanted to. My mom had always been infatuated with ghost shows and paranormal TV. She still is, finding them fascinating and remaining open to the idea. 6 months prior to the event, my aunt, my mom's sister, was diagnosed with melanoma. It was terminal, and treatment did almost nothing as the disease progressed. It became a waiting game to see when, not if, the treatment would stop working. Towards the end of her treatment, I distinctly remember a heaviness in the house. Whether it was my mom's sadness or just a feeling, being at home felt dark. For context, it's important to know the layout of our upstairs. Our house was a standard 2-story, 4-bedroom home. My room was directly next to the staircase, with my parents' and sister's rooms adjacent to each other at the other end of the house. The house was somewhat old, not haunted old, but around 30, 35 years. The upstairs floors creaked when you walked on them. My sister and I knew it all too well from sneaking around at night to get snacks and being caught by our father. One night before my aunt's passing, I was lying in bed with my bedroom door open. The hall nightlight dimly lit the area, preventing it from being pitch black. As I lay there, I distinctly felt a gut-wrenching heaviness and uneasiness in the house. I hated having my door open, but my parents insisted on it for safety. Suddenly, I heard horrific, thunderous footsteps racing from my parents' room, down the hallway, and then down the stairs, fast and heavy. I sat up immediately and listened intently. The footsteps sounded urgent and heavy, like a big man in work boots rushing down the stairs as if his life depended on it. Next thing I knew, the light came on, and my father sprinted down the stairs. I could hear him searching the house, while my mom stood at the top of the stairs looking down. I asked, "What's going on?" She asked me, "Were you out of bed?" I replied, "No." My dad came back up and asked me the same question, checked on my sister, who was sound asleep, and then double-checked that nobody else was there. My mom ended it with a stern, "Just stay in bed for the night," and left it at that. I remember being more scared than ever before. It was my first unexplained encounter. My mom told me, "It might have been someone coming to visit before taking your aunt home." I wasn't sure how to feel about that, but those footsteps remain vivid in my memory to this day. I'm one of those people that tear up a bit when talking about something truly terrifying. I'm tearing up while remembering this experience now. I had a close and dear friend years ago. We went to high school together and instantly became close as we enjoyed the same everything: movies, games, activities, and so on. This friend had a beautiful cottage in Muskoka, which was about an hour and a bit from the area we lived in. They would talk about it a bunch, saying how awesome it was to go there in the summer, as it was right on a river and was perfect for swimming and paddleboarding. They also said it was kind of haunted, just passing comments about how it was spooky, how they'd hear things at night, how it was probably home to a ghost. They always said this jokingly, like it was no big deal, so we'd usually laugh at the idea that their beautiful and pretty much newly built cottage was actually a ghost house. Fast forward a couple of years, and they invite me out to their cottage in October. The family was going up, and my friend asked if I could come with. I was super excited to go because I'd never really been to Muskoka and knew how beautiful it could be, especially in the fall, and also how often my friend mentioned the fun they'd have at the cottage. I want to now preface what comes next with the fact that I have never had any paranormal stuff happen to me, ever. I don't disbelieve it, and never have, but I've never been in a position where I'd feel like, okay, this is definitely paranormal stuff, until this event. We get to where the cottage is located in this small community called Matthiasville. As soon as we enter, I get this weird feeling, like a shadow had been cast. It was a beautiful sunny day, with good vibes all the way up until we crossed the bridge that led into the community. The weather turned overcast, but it wasn't that. There was a heavy and weird energy. We're driving along the riverside for some time. I tell my friend about the energy feeling, to which they said, "Oh, I know, it's weird, right? Like, heavy." Things lighten up, however, when we arrive at the cottage. This place was absolutely beautiful. New build, 3 floors, big deck on the second floor, and tons of windows that went floor to ceiling. It overlooked the river, and it had a forest trail at the back. The trail was way too thick with brush and wood to even try navigating, so we spent a lot of our time out by the water and on the big deck, chilling. We'd drive into the nearest town, Bracebridge, for some outings, and at night, we dedicated our time to beating the cod. World at War campaign, split screen. It was an absolute blast. We went for a long day walk, too, and saw some of the interesting points of Matthiasville, a big dam, and beyond that, a strange and small graveyard that was situated on a slight hill at the very end of the community. All the graves were old, and some of them were unmarked. Others, you couldn't even make out what the stones had written on them. It was eerie, but nothing out of the ordinary happened for the first 2 nights we spent there. On the third and last night, the dad had to head home early for some work stuff, so it was just my friend, their mom, and myself hanging out for the night. The mom was sleeping in the loft, way up on the 3rd floor, and we made the basement floor our home for the weekend. We decided to watch a movie and eat snacks, but when that was finished, I suggested we go out for a night walk, since it was a clear night with a big moon out. I loved going for night strolls, plus we hadn't really been out and about after dark, and the place was pretty beautiful at night too. My friend was really against this. They said the place was spooky enough during the day, let alone at night. I managed to convince them, and out we went. We were walking along the road that went along the river, towards the dam and the end of the community where the graveyard was. We made it about a quarter way when my friend stopped dead in their tracks. I looked back to see what was up, and they were just standing there. They looked defensive. I asked what was up, and they said, "We need to go back, right now. This feels weird, and I don't like it at all." I asked if they were scared, like if they heard an animal or something. As soon as I asked that, we heard a deep and loud cracking and snapping of wood in the dense forest above us, on a rocky ridge that was beside the road, opposite the river. I looked up to where we heard it, and it felt like everything hushed. Crickets and all other nighttime sounds seemed to have just stopped. My friend quietly said my name. I looked back at them, and then suddenly, the bushes and shrubs underneath the ridge on the side of the road exploded, as if something huge jumped in them and thrashed around. This made us bolt, and I remember just saying, "Run," as I followed behind my friend. We ran nonstop straight to the basement door of the cottage. We got there in minutes, but it felt like seconds. We ran straight into the basement bedroom and both hopped into the bed. I remember saying it was likely a coyote or a raccoon or something. As soon as I said those words, a creaking started forming up above us in the living area of the 1st floor. The creaking soon turned into slow, heavy footsteps, back and forth, and loud as if someone was wearing work boots or something. I remember my friend through tears saying, "Does that sound like a coyote to you?" I cannot even describe the absolute feeling of dread that washed over me, like there is something up there, taunting us. We lay in complete silence for what felt like hours. We got into the bed at around 3 a.m. after our walk, which turned into a run, and the footsteps didn't stop for an hour or so. I remember finally falling asleep at 6 a.m. When we woke up, the first thing we did was, of course, ask the mom if she had been awake last night around 3 a.m. She wasn't. She hadn't even gotten up once to use the bathroom, she said. Even if she did, we would have heard her door open, and then the footsteps down the loft stairs. Everything was open concept on the 1st floor, so it was easy to hear things going on. We packed up and left. My friend's parents sold the cottage a couple of years later. I don't think any of them went back once after that weekend. I was curious about the area afterward, so I did some Googling and learned that there was once a sawmill or something like that, and a tragic accident happened. I believe the owner's son drowned or had a bad accident in the mill, something tragic like that. I want to say that could be a factor here, but who knows? All I know is that night, I heard heavy, clear, and loud footsteps pacing around above us on the first floor. That was my first and only paranormal experience, and I'll never forget it. Thanks for watching our video. Have you ever had a really scary experience? We want to hear about it. You can tell us in 2 ways. Option 1 is, write down what happened and email it to us. The email address is in the description below. We're excited to read your story and learn all about what happened. And the second option is, record your story using your phone's recording feature. Make sure the sound is good, with no background noise. We want to make sure everyone can hear your scary story clearly. Pick whichever option works best for you, and let's explore your spooky experiences together. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.